I didn't expect a throne, but I didn't expect the trash bags either. There were pink balloons tied to the fence posts, fluttering in the August breeze. Little paper crowns on each table, a bouncy castle shrieking with laughter in the corner of the yard. My granddaughter was turning 6. I stood at the gate for a moment longer than I meant to, holding the little gift bag with the hand-knitted sweater I'd finished at 2:30 that morning. Lavender wool, daisy buttons. She'd once told me purple made her feel like magic. I remembered that. No one noticed me come in. My daughter-in-law brushed past with a tray of cupcakes. "Hi, oh, just find a spot anywhere, okay?" she said over her shoulder, already gone before the last syllable. The tables were full, adults laughing, plastic cups sweating in their hands. Little cousins in matching outfits chasing one another between chair legs. There wasn't even an empty corner. Just plates already used, cake frosting smeared across napkins. Then my son found me. "Dad, you made it," he said, half hugging me like an afterthought. "Can you sit over there?" He pointed to the far edge of the yard, behind the buffet table, next to 3 black trash bags, a recycling bin, and a folding chair tilted slightly in the dirt. I looked at it, then back at him. "Oh, it's shaded over there, kind of." "You'll be fine," he added, already turning back to the crowd. So I sat, quietly, like a coat hung in the wrong closet. The plastic chair creaked under me, one leg shorter than the rest. I tried to balance it on a stray tile from the old patio. Bees buzzed near an open soda can. The smell of warm garbage drifted toward me every time the breeze shifted. There were no napkins left, no water. No one offered. An hour passed. The children ran past me again and again, none of them looking twice. My granddaughter didn't even glance my way. She was too busy dancing with someone dressed as a cartoon princess. They took photos. I wasn't in any of them. I watched my son stand up near the grill and raise his cup. "To family," he said. Everyone cheered. I sat beside the trash, and somewhere, under the noise, under the hum of celebration and the clang of a soda can hitting metal, I felt it. I wasn't invited. I was allowed. There's a difference, and sometimes it smells like spoiled fruit and sounds like your own name said without affection. I shifted in the chair and felt something jab into my side. It was a half-empty goodie bag, torn at the seam, leaking confetti and a sticky lollipop. I moved it aside. The sweater in my lap felt heavier now, not with wool, but with everything it meant, and didn't mean to them. I waited, not for kindness, not even for cake, just to see if anyone would remember I was there. They didn't, so I stood, not loudly, not in protest, just with the slow, deliberate grace of someone who finally understood their place and knew they wouldn't sit in it again. Not by the trash, not anymore. It started with the sweater, not the one I gave her at the party. That came later. I'm talking about the first one, the one I knit last November when the days grew short and the mornings smelled like frost. Soft green yarn, tiny white hearts stitched along the collar. Took me 4 evenings. My fingers ached by the end, but it was the kind of ache that felt useful. I'd wrapped it carefully. Tissue paper, a little ribbon, and a card that read, "For your winter walks. Love, Grandpa." I dropped it off at their house the week before Thanksgiving. No one was home, so I left it on the porch. Tucked it behind the flower pot, like they asked me to do with deliveries. I texted my son just to be sure it wouldn't get wet if it rained. He didn't reply until the next morning. "Thanks, Dad." No exclamation mark, no photo of her wearing it. No, she loved it, or even she tried it on. Just 2 words, clipped like the message was a task to complete. A receipt, not a conversation. I told myself it didn't matter. That they were busy. That kids today don't send thank you notes anymore, not like we used to. But that Saturday, I saw a photo on my daughter-in-law's profile. A casual post. The 3 of them in matching coats at the Holiday Lights parade. My granddaughter was wearing something new, a store-bought puffer jacket, bright pink with little cartoon owls. Not the sweater, not even for the photo. I didn't comment. I just stared at the screen a little too long, until the phone dimmed and went dark in my hand. Maybe it's silly to care about something so small, but love gets sewn into stitches when you get older, into the hours you spend measuring sleeves and redoing buttons. It becomes how you speak when words start feeling like interruptions. Later that week, I stopped by with a tin of snickerdoodles, just to say hello. No occasion, just me being in the neighborhood, though I wasn't. I'd driven 30 minutes. The house was bright with music. A cartoon theme song playing loud from the TV. My granddaughter's laughter bubbled up through the window like a memory trying to get back in. My son opened the door. "Oh," he said. "Hey, Dad, everything okay?" I smiled, held up the tin. "Just thought I'd bring these by, fresh out of the oven." He hesitated, looked behind him like someone was calling. Then he stepped onto the porch, pulling the door halfway closed behind him. "Thanks," he said, taking the tin. "That's nice of you." I nodded, waited. He didn't invite me in. Not even for 5 minutes. Not to see her, not to sit down, have a cup of tea, warm my hands. "She's in the middle of a show," he added, as if that explained everything. "And Alice just got her down for quiet time. You know how it is." I nodded again. Of course I knew. I'd raised him after all. I knew what quiet time meant. I just didn't realize I was supposed to respect it from the sidewalk. "Tell her I said hello," I said, though I doubted he would. He smiled like he wasn't sure how to end the moment. "Will do. Thanks again for the cookies." The door clicked shut before I'd even stepped off the porch. I stood there for a beat longer than I should have. Listening. No footsteps. No little voice shouting, "Grandpa." No one pulling the curtain aside to wave, just the sound of laughter inside, muffled now, not meant for me. On the drive home, I told myself it was nothing, that it wasn't personal, that families get busy, that parents juggle too much, that children need routines. But I kept seeing that sweater, folded in a bag somewhere, unworn, forgotten. Love, too, can be left behind the flower pot. That night, I sat in my armchair and looked out the window for a long while. The neighborhood was quiet. Porch lights glowed like small beacons against the dusk. I didn't knit the next evening, or the next. Something in me had gone still. Not angry, just still. Like a door half closed that I wasn't sure would open again. Not unless someone reached for the handle first. And no one did. It's strange, the things you stop being invited to. At first it was the little things. Movie nights, ice cream runs, a casual lunch after Sunday service. Things that seemed too small to notice when they disappeared, like socks slipping behind the dryer. You think, "I'll find them later," but you never do. I noticed it most on Wednesdays. That used to be my day with her, my granddaughter. The one day I picked her up from preschool, held her small hand as we walked to the car, listened to her chatter about letters and glitter glue. I always packed a snack, apple slices and cheddar cubes in a little tin, and she always asked the same question. "Did you bring the purple blanket?" It was her favorite, one I kept in the back seat, soft and worn, because she liked to nap on the way home. Then one week, my daughter-in-law texted, "No need today, Mark got off early." I said, "Okay, 1 week off." The next Wednesday, no message came, but when I pulled into the school lot out of habit, her name wasn't on the list. "She's already been picked up," the woman at the front said, smiling, polite. I sat in my car a while. The purple blanket was still in the back seat. Folded. Waiting, it stayed there for months. On Fridays, I used to cook dinner for the family, just something simple, chicken casserole, beef stew, sometimes pot roast if I was feeling nostalgic. I'd leave it on the counter with a note, "Reheat at 350. Love, Dad." No one ever said thank you, but they ate it. I'd check the pan when I came by the next day. Empty, clean in the sink. That was enough. Until one Friday I saw a pizza box in the trash. Half a pepperoni still stuck to the lid. My casserole was untouched, foil still sealed, sitting on the second shelf of the fridge. I didn't bring dinner the next week. No one asked why. It became a rhythm, the slow subtraction of my presence, not by confrontation, but by omission. Invitations that never came. Updates shared in passing, if at all. My name began to fade from the group texts. Once I texted a photo of the garden in bloom. Just a quick note, thought Lily might want to see the tulips she planted. No reply. The photo sat marked as seen. That was it. I began walking in the mornings. Just up the street and back. The air was cooler then, quieter. I nodded to neighbors, most of whom I didn't know well, but I liked the motion of it. like I was part of something. One morning, I passed the park near the elementary school. I paused by the fence. Children were running across the field, and there she was, my granddaughter, in a yellow jacket, hair in braids. I hadn't known she played soccer. I watched for 5 minutes, maybe less, just long enough to see her score a goal and look up at the bleachers, searching for someone. I wasn't there. I went home and made tea. I used to drink 2 cups, one for company, one for me. Now it's just the one. I still set out a second mug sometimes, old habit. It stays cold. The routines I'd built over years began to shrink. The grocery list grew shorter. Just oatmeal, milk, tea, a few apples. No more marshmallows, no juice boxes, no chocolate chip cookies. No one asked for those anymore. The Sunday paper still came. I'd spread it out across the table and read every section, slowly, even the classifieds. Not for content, but for the feeling of unfolding something. A neighbor asked if I still went to church with the family. I told her the truth. They go to a new place now, closer to Lily's new school. More contemporary, they said. I wasn't invited to visit. The chair in their living room, the one I used to sit in, the one closest to the lamp with the fraying shade, was moved one day. Pushed near the coat rack by the garage door. Now it holds spare bags. Coats. Overflow. Like me. One afternoon, I let myself into their house with the key I still had. I was returning a book I borrowed. No one was home. I left the book on the kitchen counter, and then I paused. The photos on the fridge, there used to be one of Lily and me from the zoo trip last spring. Her on my shoulders laughing, her hands tugging at my ears. She had ice cream on her nose. It was gone. In its place, a magnet with a recipe. Smoothie bowls, chia seeds, something about gut health. I stood there a long time. Eventually, I pulled the book back into my bag and walked out the same door I came in. Locked it gently. Made sure it clicked. I didn't want to be accused of forgetting how. That night, I sat in my kitchen, alone, and reheated soup. Split pea. My wife used to call it liquid comfort. I ate it slowly, watching the steam curl above the bowl, and I thought, not for the first time, that absence has a weight. Not loud like grief, not sharp like anger, just heavy. Like wet wool. You carry it without realizing until one day your shoulders ache and you wonder why. It's the accumulation of small goodbyes that never got said out loud, and in their place, silence, polite, pervasive, permanent. It wasn't always like this. There was a time, not so long ago, though it feels like another life, when I used to walk through their door and be met with shouts of "Grandpa," little feet scrambling across the hardwood floor, arms wrapping around my legs before I'd even set the grocery bag down. That memory lives inside me like a warm room I can still step into, even now. I remember Lily's second birthday. The theme was sunflowers. My daughter-in-law said it was her favorite flower that month, though I suspect it was just what matched the party napkins. Still, I arrived early with a cooler full of deviled eggs and the potato salad recipe that belonged to my late wife. I wore a yellow polo to match the decorations. Even brought a sunflower pin I'd picked up at a craft fair just for the occasion. Lily saw me from across the yard and ran, stubby legs, arms flailing, that wild baby laugh spilling from her mouth like it couldn't be contained. She shouted, "Papa," even though we'd been working on Grandpa. I didn't correct her. She barreled into me, nearly knocking the cooler from my hand, and when I knelt down, she cupped my face in her tiny hands and whispered, "You came." As if there'd ever been a doubt. They gave me the best chair that day, one with a cushion, under the big maple tree. My son brought me lemonade without being asked. My daughter-in-law asked for my help slicing the cake, said I had the steadiest hands. People noticed me. Lily opened the gift I'd brought, a hand-sewn doll with a tiny knit scarf. She held it up like a prize and kissed it on the nose. I remember her saying, "Dolly cold," and wrapping her own napkin around its little shoulders. Everyone laughed. Later that evening, after the guests had gone and the paper plates were piled in the trash, my son sat next to me on the porch step. He handed me a beer, clinked his bottle to mine, and said, "Thanks for being the kind of dad I want to be." I didn't say anything at first, just looked at him, the porch light making his face seem older than I remembered. "You already are," I said. It was a lie, but a kind one. We sat there for a long time, just two men watching dusk settle over a backyard filled with half-deflated balloons and forgotten party hats. That memory has sharp edges now. I keep returning to it, unbidden. The way some people revisit dreams or regrets. And I wonder, where did it turn? Was it when they moved to the new house, the one with the granite countertops and the mudroom big enough for a treadmill? Was it when Lily started school and they joined that new parents group with words like conscious boundaries and emotional load? Or did it start before that? Maybe it started when I stopped being useful, when I no longer knew how to work the new baby monitor, or when I brought whole milk instead of oat. Maybe it was when my jokes stopped being funny, when I called her sweet pea in front of her friends and she said, "Grandpa, that's baby talk." She was only 5. It's a quiet thing, losing your place. You don't notice the shift until one day you're standing outside the circle instead of in it, still smiling, still trying, but not quite part of the warmth anymore. You're not resented, you're not mistreated. You're just forgotten in plain sight. Now when I go to visit, I knock, and sometimes I wait longer than I should before the door opens. Sometimes it doesn't. I still have that sunflower pin. It's tucked inside a small wooden box where I keep my wedding ring, a folded letter from 1983, and the Polaroid of Lily in my lap. Frosting on her cheeks, hands wrapped around the doll. She was smiling at me like I was the center of the world. And for a moment, I was. I don't need the center anymore. But a seat at the table, not behind it, not beside the trash, would have been enough. A week before Lily's 6th birthday, my son called. That alone was unusual. He rarely called anymore. Texts mostly, short ones. "Need anything from Costco?" Or "Can you stop by Thursday?" Functional phrases, no room for warmth. But this time he called. "Hey Dad," he said, his voice bright, practiced. "We're having a little backyard thing for Lily's birthday. Nothing huge, just cake, a few friends. Thought we'd see if you were free." The word we caught in my chest like a pebble in a shoe. I said, "Of course, I'd love to come." He gave me the time, the address I already knew by heart. Then added, almost as an afterthought, "Oh, and Alice asked if you wouldn't mind bringing that lemonade she likes, the one with mint." I wrote it down, even though I didn't need to. After we hung up, I stood there in the kitchen holding the phone like it might ring again. It didn't, but something inside me stirred, the faintest hum. A soft, foolish hope. Maybe they remembered. Maybe things were softening. Maybe they missed me, even just a little. That night, I pulled the yarn from the back cupboard. Lavender, soft, Lily's favorite color. I hadn't knit in months. My fingers were slower now, more stiff in the mornings. But I worked carefully. A small sweater, tiny daisy buttons, a hem of white scallops. It took 2 nights and most of my patience, but when I held it up, finished, it looked like something that belonged to someone who was still loved. I even found a box, one with gold foil stars on the lid. I tucked the sweater inside, folded tissue, wrote a small note in my best handwriting. For the girl who made me believe in magic again. Love, Grandpa. I arrived at the house early, just 15 minutes, but early all the same. The front door was ajar. I could hear music playing in the backyard, that kind of upbeat soundtrack meant for keeping children cheerful. Laughter, voices, the thud of feet on the patio, balloons bobbing above the fence line. I rang the doorbell anyway, out of habit, out of respect. No one came, so I let myself in. No one noticed. I stepped into the kitchen, gift box in hand, and paused. Cupcakes lined the counter, perfectly frosted. A platter of sandwiches, cut into shapes. Someone had gone to a lot of effort. I smiled at that. They wanted it to be nice. Then I spotted Alice at the back door. She turned and saw me, gave a quick smile, tight, distracted, and waved toward the yard. "Just out there," she called before disappearing behind a tray of juice pouches. I stepped outside. There were 20 chairs, all full. Adults perched in clusters, chatting over paper plates, children darting past in blurs of sugar and glee. A woman in a fairy costume twisted balloon animals under a pink canopy. I stood on the edge with my little gift box and the bottle of mint lemonade tucked under my arm, and waited. Until my son saw me. He jogged over, sunglasses on his head, a beer in hand. "Hey, Dad, you made it." He glanced behind him, then back to me. "Can you sit over there?" He pointed to the side yard, just behind the buffet table, one plastic chair, no cushion, no umbrella. Beside it, 3 black trash bags knotted and sagging, a recycling bin full of half-drunk juice boxes, a paper plate stuck to the grass with frosting facing down. Something inside me stilled. "Oh," I said, "sure." He clapped me on the shoulder. "Thanks, you're the best." I sat, not right away. I took my time, set the gift down on the ground, rested the lemonade beside it, adjusted the angle of the chair so it wasn't facing the garbage directly. But there was no shade, no napkin, no drink offered, just the faint hum of flies and the tang of vinegar from a spilled coleslaw container. For an hour I watched. Watched the fairy twist a poodle balloon, watched Alice hand out gift bags, watched Lily hug the woman in the sparkly tiara, her gymnastics coach, I later overheard. She didn't look in my direction once. I thought, maybe when they sing, maybe during cake, maybe someone will wave me over then. But when the candles were lit, my son raised his cup and shouted, "To family, we're so blessed." Everyone cheered. I didn't move, didn't wave, didn't smile. I just sat as ants crawled along the leg of the chair and the sun crept further down my neck. And that little hum inside me, the one that had dared to believe, dared to imagine, fell quiet. Not with anger, not even sadness, just with knowing. Knowing that whatever space I used to hold in their lives had shrunk to the size of a plastic chair by the garbage, and that no one, not even my own son, thought it unusual. The sweater stayed in the box, unopened, the note unread. That was the moment I stopped hoping for things to change. Not with bitterness, but with peace. The kind that comes when you finally understand. You don't need to fight for a place at a table where you're only ever going to be seated out of obligation. I didn't sleep that night, not because of rage or sorrow or any grand emotion worthy of a story, but because my body felt hollow, like I'd been wrung out, slowly, over years, and now there was nothing left to wring. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, listening to the hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen. That old sound used to feel like home. Now it was just a reminder that I was still here, still alive, and for what? The next morning, I tried to go about things as usual, boiled water for tea, opened the cabinet to grab my mug, the one with the little chip on the handle, the one Lily decorated when she was 4. Best Grandpa, in crooked letters. But I couldn't bring myself to pour. The tea bag sat on the counter, dry. I wandered the house like a man forgetting what each room was for. My slippers barely made a sound on the tile. The living room still had the same framed photos, my son's graduation, their wedding, Lily in a tutu, but none of them had me in them. Funny, isn't it? You can be the one behind the camera your whole life, and one day realize you don't exist in the story you helped build. I walked to the hallway closet, opened the door where I keep the old wrapping paper, the tissue, the tape. The gift box was still there, lavender sweater folded inside, daisies lining the hem. The note resting quietly on top. They hadn't even opened it. I hadn't retrieved it from the party. I left it there, under the chair, beside the bags of trash. My son must have put it in my car, or maybe Alice did. Without a word, without even pretending. I lifted the lid, touched the buttons, and that's when the voice in my head said it plainly. Not cruelly, not even sadly, just truthfully. You don't belong to them anymore. Your background, your support beam. You're the coat rack by the door, useful when needed, unnoticed when not. I sat down at the kitchen table and let my hands rest on the wood. They ached, not from arthritis, from years of being busy, from lifting, mending, cooking, folding, always folding, laundry, napkins, expectations. I remembered when I used to be strong, not just in my arms, but in purpose. I used to matter. I used to walk into a room and be met with light. My wife's smile, my son's voice calling Dad, like I was still someone solid. Now I was. An afterthought, or worse, a duty, and I realized I had run out of reasons to wait. No one had hurt me on purpose, not once, And yet here I was, diminished all the same. Kind neglect, that's what it was. The most dangerous kind. It never announces itself, it just chips and chips until one day you reach for something inside yourself and find it's gone. That was the day I knew I had to leave. Not as punishment, not as a warning shot across the bow of their comfort, but because staying meant continuing to disappear, and I couldn't do that anymore. I went to the drawer in the hallway, the one with the loose batteries and keys we stopped labeling years ago, and I found them, the keys to the house, the ones I'd signed over last spring, quietly, without ceremony. I want you to have it, I'd said then, so you won't have to worry, a little security. He'd hugged me, called me the best dad, said I'd made things easier for everyone, and I had, at the cost of making things harder for myself. I held those keys in my hand and felt their weight, cold, sharp, honest. That afternoon I drove back to their house, no party this time, no music, just the sound of a lawnmower humming 2 houses down and the wind dragging a plastic bag across the sidewalk. My son answered the door. "Hey, Dad," he said, smiling like nothing had changed. "Alice is making a pasta bake. You want to stay?" I didn't answer. I just reached into my pocket, pulled out the keys and placed them in his palm. He looked down. "What's this?" "You'll want them," I said. "For what?" "Because I'm leaving." His brow furrowed. "For the weekend?" "No, just leaving." There was a pause, one of those heavy ones that make even the air feel uncertain. "Dad, come on," he said, his voice lowering. "You're overreacting. It was just a party. We were busy." "I know," I said. "You're always busy." He hesitated. "We didn't mean anything by it." "You didn't need to," I said. He looked at me like he wanted to argue, but he didn't. I turned, walked back down the porch steps. The sun was high, hot against the crown of my head. I didn't look back. That night I packed a small bag, 2 shirts, my slacks. The cardigan Lily once said made me look like a tree. I'd liked that. I booked a cottage near the coast, 1 bedroom, a small balcony. No expectations. And when I locked the door to the old house for the last time, I felt neither triumphant nor afraid. Just empty. But sometimes empty is the first step toward full. I didn't decide all at once. There was no grand declaration, no slamming of doors, no raised voice echoing through their neat suburban house. Just me, standing in the laundry room, holding a paper napkin with frosting smeared across it. It had been tucked in my jacket pocket. I don't even remember placing it there. The lavender sweater sat unopened on the passenger seat of my car. The lemonade bottle had rolled under the floor mat. And I sat in the driveway long after the sun dipped below the fence line, listening to the slow click of cooling engine parts and wondering how long I'd been parked there. The napkin crinkled in my hand as I turned it over, looking for something. A child's doodle, a name, a trace of inclusion. It was blank. I let the silence stretch until the night wrapped around me like an old coat. Familiar, threadbare in places. Then I went inside. My house still smelled faintly of wood polish and eucalyptus. From the sachets I kept in the hallway. My wife loved the scent, said it reminded her of the time we stayed in a little cabin after we lost our first child. Said it helped her breathe. I'd kept it going, the scent, even now, especially now. I sat in the chair by the window, the one I used to rock Lily in when she was a baby, when I would hum the same tune my own father sang to me. She would grip my pinky finger like it was a lifeline. I hadn't heard her laugh in my direction in months. And that night, that evening after the party, I finally said it to myself. This isn't working. Not the way I'd hoped, not the way I'd told myself it might, if I just held on. If I kept showing up, if I kept being useful. But usefulness fades, and when it goes, sometimes so does everything else. That thought didn't make me cry. I haven't cried in years. It just settled. Like dust on a bookshelf, a soft confirmation of what had been true for longer than I'd admitted. They weren't cruel, they never had been. But they had built a life with me on the edges, smiling toward me, not at me, including me when it was convenient, when they needed a ride, a check, a casserole. I had made myself small for them, too small, and now there was barely enough of me left to see. I looked around my home, the photos on the walls, ones I'd hung myself, told a different story. One of birthdays where I stood at the center, anniversaries with arms around shoulders, Christmases with messy wrapping paper and even messier hair. There was joy in those photos. There was me in them. But not anymore. Somewhere between the last thank you and the first silence, I had become optional. And in that quiet space, something shifted. Not anger, not defiance, just a whisper in my own chest. "You're still here." I said it out loud, just to see how it felt. My voice didn't shake. "I'm still here." Not for them, not in their schedules or their group texts or their tidy explanations to friends, but here, in this house, in this chair, in this life I had once dreamed of building, and maybe, just maybe, I deserved to be seen in it, not tolerated, not managed, not assigned a seat next to the garbage. Seen. That was the turning point, not the leaving, not yet. Just the decision that I could not stay like this anymore, that the cost of proximity without presence was too high, that I had given all I had and received. Not malice, no, something worse, indifference. I stood slowly, turned off the lamp, went to bed without brushing my teeth. Sleep came quickly, like it hadn't in years. And somewhere before dawn, I dreamed of a porch overlooking the ocean and a small table set for one, and a hot cup of coffee warming my hands. There were no balloons, no plastic chairs, just me. And it was enough. I didn't tell anyone I was moving. There were no announcements. No emails, no sentimental goodbyes over coffee. Just one morning, I got up, made a list, and started crossing things off. First on the list, call the number I'd circled 3 weeks earlier. A coastal retirement cottage. 1 bedroom, ocean-facing, modest but clean. I'd found it late one night, scrolling through places I thought I'd never live. Places for other people, braver people, people with no one waiting on them. But now, I had no one waiting. Just people who expected. There's a difference. I dialed the number. A cheerful woman named Sandra answered. She asked if I was calling for my parents. I told her gently that I was the parent. "Oh," she said, flustered, "you sound well. Good for you." I smiled at that, the first real smile in a long time. By that evening, I'd placed a deposit, paid 3 months in advance, asked for the unit with the small porch and the lemon tree out front. Sandra said, "That one gets the morning sun." I said, "Perfect." The next morning, I packed lightly, 2 suitcases, one with clothes, the other with books. My collection of Wendell Berry poems, an old Bible with margin notes from my wife, and the small blue photo album Lily once helped me fill. I left most of the furniture, let the house feel like a museum exhibit someone forgot to tour. I packed the lavender sweater too, not because I thought I'd give it to her again, I just couldn't leave it behind. It had come to mean something different now, not a gift for someone else, but a reminder of the tenderness I was still capable of time, of care, of love, even if it went unseen. By afternoon, the car was loaded. Before I left, I stood in the center of the living room and looked around. The clock ticked softly. Dust caught the light in the same lazy way it always had. I touched the doorframe. My wife had painted it white 37 years ago. I'd meant to repaint it last spring. I never did. I left a note on the kitchen table, not for them. For me, this house was full of life. I was here. I was present. I was love. I locked the door behind me. The drive was long, but not lonely. Not this time. With every mile, I felt lighter, like shedding a coat you didn't realize you'd been wearing through summer. I arrived just before sunset. The sea was quiet. The cottage was smaller than the pictures, but that suited me. Sandra met me with a key and a folder of welcome materials. "Take your time settling in," she said. "No rush." I nodded, then stepped inside. The air smelled of pine cleaner and salt. There was a small kitchen, a bed tucked neatly beneath the window, a table for 2, but I'd only need 1 chair. I opened the window. The sound of waves filtered in like music through old walls. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel like I was missing anything. I didn't feel forgotten. I felt chosen. By me. That evening, I walked down to the corner bakery, bought a loaf of sourdough and a small jar of orange marmalade. The woman behind the counter smiled at me like I belonged. "You new in town?" she asked. I nodded. "Just arrived today." "Well," she said, bagging my bread, "you've picked a good place. We're quiet here, but not unfriendly." I liked that. Quiet, but not unfriendly. I took my bag and walked back slowly, listening to the sound of my own footsteps. Not rushed, not needed. Free. Back at the cottage, I set the table for one. Plate, knife, cloth napkin. I sliced the bread, spread the marmalade, and sat down to eat with the windows open and the sea air drifting in. No one texted, no one called. And that was okay, because I had taken an action that affirmed something I hadn't dared say out loud in years. I am still worth showing up for, even if the only person who shows up is me. I didn't plan it. It wasn't revenge. It wasn't strategy. It was just time. 2 weeks after I moved into the cottage, a letter arrived. Not a call, not a visit. Just a plain white envelope with my son's handwriting. A little rushed, the way he always writes when he's uncomfortable. Inside, a note that read, "Lily asked about you. She misses you. Maybe we could do lunch next week." No apology. No mention of the birthday, just a suggestion. A placeholder, like I was being penciled in between errands. I read it twice, then folded it neatly and placed it in the back of my journal, not to preserve it, just to put it somewhere that wasn't my heart. That afternoon, I walked to the village post office and picked up a manila envelope, sturdy. No return address label, just enough room for a few items. Back at the cottage, I opened the old blue photo album. I flipped through slowly, each page a snapshot of a life I had given without condition. My son's high school graduation, his first car with me beside him holding the keys, a fishing trip where we both caught nothing but laughed anyway. Lily, at 3, curled in my lap, face sticky with ice cream. The time I dressed as Santa because their hired actor cancelled last minute. Her eyes wide with wonder. "You know Santa?" she whispered. I took out only one photo, just one. The one from her second birthday, the sunflower party. She's in my arms, frosting on her cheeks, hand on my chest. We're both laughing, her tiny fingers tangled in my sweater. I placed it in the envelope, then, after a long breath, I added the lavender sweater. Folded small, the daisy buttons lined up like patient little eyes. No note, no explanation, just the gift I had once offered freely, returned to its rightful owner. It wasn't a peace offering, it was a punctuation mark. A period at the end of a sentence I had spent years writing with my hands, my time, my presence. I sealed the envelope, addressed it carefully in black ink. Their home, the same one I had once paid off in full. I didn't walk it to the post office right away. Instead, I sat on the porch with the package in my lap. The sun was low. The ocean was quiet. Across the street, a woman in a wide hat watered her plants. A teenage boy rode by on a rusted bike, earbuds in. The world went on as it always does. Eventually, I stood, walked to the mailbox at the corner, lifted the slot, placed the envelope inside, let it go. I didn't expect a response. I didn't need one. That was the point. It wasn't a gesture meant to open a door. It was the act of gently, finally, closing it. Not slamming, not locking, just no longer standing on the threshold. I walked home slowly, noticing the way the light hit the water, the way the wind moved through the lemon tree. When I reached the cottage, I turned off my phone, lit a candle, and sat with myself. No one interrupted. And I realized this too was love. The kind I'd given and waited to receive. The kind I could finally give to myself. Every Sunday I sit outside the bakery. Same small table, same ceramic mug, black coffee, no sugar, a warm croissant if I'm feeling indulgent. The table wobbles slightly, the chair creaks, but the breeze is gentle and the morning light rests easy across the pavement. And no one asks me to move. There's a comfort in routine again, not the kind built around obligation, pickups, errands, favors asked with half-hearted thanks, but the kind built from choice, my choice. The bakery staff knows me now. They don't know my history, don't know I used to carry a family on my back like a packed suitcase. Don't know how many sweaters I knitted, how many birthdays I remembered. How many times I showed up uninvited just to prove I still mattered. They just know I like the corner seat and that I nod in thanks more often than I speak. Sometimes young parents walk by, their children tugging on arms, pointing at the pastries in the glass case. Once a girl about Lily's age tripped on the sidewalk and scraped her knee. I offered a napkin. Nothing more. The mother smiled at me and said, "Thank you." Simple, unloaded. It struck me then how rare it is to be seen without being needed, to be acknowledged not for what you provide, but for simply being. I stayed at the table long after my coffee cooled, watching, listening, letting the slow rhythm of strangers fill the space where old hopes used to live. I thought I'd feel lonely. I don't. There is no victory in abandonment, no medal in being excluded, but there is strength in knowing you stepped away with grace, that you chose to preserve what was left of your dignity when no one else thought to guard it. Sometimes that's the only triumph there is. The other day, Sandra, the woman who manages the cottages, asked if I'd consider leading a gardening club. Said a few of the others were looking for someone with a bit of know-how and patience. I told her I'd think about it. That night, I opened the small wooden box where I keep things that still matter. My wife's wedding ring, a clipped newspaper article from 1979, and the note I wrote before I left the house, the one I thought I was leaving behind. This house was full of life. I was here, I was present, I was love. I read it again, and this time I didn't feel the sting of what had been lost. I felt the warmth of what I had been all along. They may not remember, but I do. And that's enough. Because love, real love, isn't always returned the way we hope. But it still leaves its mark. In daisy buttons, in porchlight shadows, in the way you pour your tea when no one is watching. I still write Lily's name in the margins of my crossword. I still keep her drawing on my fridge, faded at the corners. But I don't wait by the phone. I don't linger by the mailbox. I live, quietly, softly, completely. And if there is one thing I know now, it is this. You can spend a lifetime giving, showing up, holding space, keeping faith, and one day you wake to find that no one remembered to return the favor. But that doesn't mean you failed. It means you gave from a place so deep, so true, that it outlived the recognition. That is the quiet triumph, not being seen by them, but seeing yourself fully, finally, and deciding that's enough. Because it is. And I am.